I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion.
Okay, good. So let us begin with today's class. But before beginning, there are a lot of things that I think we need to, discuss. So, how many of you have any queries regarding the boot camp? And I am talking about um, regarding the mails that you get, along with whatever is posted on the group, and any of these things like this. Yes. So, do you have any doubts, anyone? To whomsoever, uh, all of those people who are attending the class today, do you have any queries regarding that? No. So, if you do not have any queries, is it so much difficult for you to understand that we are no more sending any emails? Okay, so you want to know the conditions to be fulfilled for getting the certificate. So the first thing here is looks like that you are not really concerned about what you're studying, what you're learning, but you're more concerned about the certificate. Okay, because in the previous few days, I've been looking at people who are actually sending their details just because they did not get the email, even though I told in the previous class as well that even though you did not receive any email, if you are registered and you are a part of the group, then we are going to consider you. Is it so difficult for you guys to understand only this thing? So why is it that I see, even though we've completed 2 lectures of this boot camp, some of you are still posting your details with the university roll number and email and are saying that we did not get the email? If you are already a part of this boot camp group, that means you are able to access all of the required information. Okay, so some of the students are not able to join the group and they have got the emails. It is fine if they are not able to join the group. Let me tell you why. Because we have been sending emails since Saturday. The boot camp started on Monday, which is 14th, and we have been sending emails starting from Saturday, even on the mail which was sent on Saturday, on Sunday, and even on Monday, included the link for the Telegram group. It was clearly mentioned in the email that all of the conversation, all of the queries regarding the boot camp will be through this Telegram group. So, even after giving you 3 days, more than 3 days, why were you not able to join the group? It clearly means that those who haven't still joined the boot camp group are not serious about the boot camp. You are computer science students and still you don't understand a simple meaning of a message which has been written to you with any kind of warning. It is not about changing the name of the group. We have revoked the group link and we have done that purposely. That has been done purposely by us. Also, this was about the group joining and the email thing. You guys still can't understand a meaning of a simple message. Those who are not a part of the bootcamp group, they're going to remain outside the group throughout the bootcamp because they were not serious from the beginning itself. For others who are not getting the emails of the classes, we are not sending any emails regarding any information which you will be kept from. You'll be getting all of the information if you're a part of the boot camp or if you're a part of the email. So either so all of the information will be floated through emails as well as the Telegram group. So if you are registered and you are a part of either of these, then let me tell you that you are not missing out on anything. You're going to get all of the information. So just stop bothering anyone here. Do not post messages. No need to send your details on the group because it is of no use. Stop spamming others. Am I loud and clear? Can you all understand this one basic thing? Good. Thank you. Okay, so let us begin. So let us just first begin with discussing about the test. So how many of you attempted the test and found out it to be very easy? And so according to you, what was the level of the test? Was it going fine? And if there are any queries regarding the test, then you can post them in the group. Easy, right? Okay, good. The level was fine. So for a lot of you, the level was easy. We are going to go ahead and increase the level day by day. So let us say if you found out the first test easier, it is going to be a bit difficult uh, in the today's test that we are going to be giving you. Okay, so a lot of you already messaged me and and you are already, some of you are already posting some certain questions on the group as well. So you were saying that you encountered some different kinds of problems. So a lot of you told me that you got TLE, which is time limit exceeded error, and some of you are saying that you got segmentation fault in the first question. Then, okay, so we are going to have a separate class for that. Let us just keep a separate class for this, wherein we are going to discuss how can you actually attempt questions on an online platform where you have an online compiler, and what are the different things that you have to keep in mind, along with the different kind of errors that can come while you're coding online. Okay, so let us just keep a separate class for that. For now, let us begin with what we were looking at. So in the previous class, we started off with arrays, right? Okay, so I think you're saying that you would like to discuss the questions that were a part of the test. But if we start off by discussing questions from the test each day, then we won't be able to cover up a lot of things that we want to do here. Now, if you have queries regarding this, we can arrange, let us say, a doubt session for that. Or otherwise, if not so, if you found out to be easier, that then we can actually discuss the logic, uh, let us say, in some part of the class. So definitely not today. Let us just keep that for some other day and then discuss. Okay, so before moving on and starting off with the review of the previous lecture, let me also respond to some of the queries that have been posted in the group. A lot of you are telling me about the different issues that you faced while giving the test yesterday. So, the first thing here is there are a lot of you in the boot camp. So, there are more than 1,000 candidates that have registered for the boot camp. And since a lot of you have been facing problems, the first thing here I would like to remind you is that, again, you are computer science students. If you are facing some issue, go ahead online, search for the issue, resolve your issue, and give the test. It is as simple as that. I cannot be individually solving everyone's queries, right? There are so many of you, I cannot individually give up time for everyone and look at who is able to do it and who is not. Okay, so this is the first thing. The second thing is that there is a time limit after which the link for the test is going to expire. So if you're saying that when you attempted the test, the screen went blank and the test did not load, that means that you have been attempting the test after the time, after the time limit has exceeded. Okay. For others, we know, since these are unprecedented times and we have been facing a lot of internet issues, there will be issues like these whenever you give the exam. Let us say your screen might not load and stuff like that, but we will have to deal with this and look into it. We cannot always arrange um, a retest, right? So we will have to move ahead in the same manner. Okay. it is not my responsibility that I look into what is your issue and how can it be resolved. It is your own responsibility to resolve your issue and get it done with. Okay. Okay, let us now move ahead. So we are going to be discussing. Let us just first review what we looked into previously. So we started off with arrays. We said that arrays are actually used for contiguous memory allocation, and they store the elements of same or similar type, and it is easier access of any particular element by just writing down the index, right? So we also looked into how an array can be represented, and that the indexes range from 0 to number of elements minus 1. Yes, we are going to be quickly reviewing everything. So once we come to this particular part where we have the pointer array operation, you can then go ahead and ask any of your doubts. Otherwise, we are going to just look at everything once again. So we looked into declaration then. In the declaration part, we always have the name or the name of the array along with the size or the number of elements that you want in your array, and that is for a static array declaration. You also go ahead, write down the type of the array that you want to have. So whatever type of elements do you want to store, you are going to declare the array of that particular type. Okay. Then we went ahead with initialization and we looked into different cases. So if, for example, you do not write the number of elements in the array and directly initialize it, in that case, the compiler will automatically declare an array of those number of elements size. The size of the array will be equivalent to the number of elements that you have initialized. The second case wherein we looked at if you have already defined the number of elements in the array and you initialize only some of them, then the rest of the elements in the array will be initialized with the value of 0. And the third case was whenever you want to input and input the array elements from the user. So you simply use a for loop and use the scanf function to input the array elements. Next, we looked into dynamic memory allocation. For the part of dynamic memory allocation, we say that it is actually used so that we can change the size of the array during runtime. Whenever we want to make such changes, we can use dynamic memory allocation. And there are certain functions under the stdlib.h library which are going to help us in dynamic memory allocation. So we looked into two different functions. The first was malloc, which is actually going to dynamically allocate some memory for you, whatever you specify, and it uses a single large block of memory. So whenever it allocates memory, it actually does it in a single large block. Then we looked into how can you use malloc function. So you will need a pointer. Say suppose you want to have a integer array, so you're going to take up an integer pointer and then move ahead by writing down the size of here you say integer since you want to have an integer array, and then you go ahead by saying the number multiplying it by the number of elements that you want to have. Okay, so now since you have number of elements mentioned here and the size in bytes inside malloc, it is going to allocate this much memory for you in the heap. So where does it allocate memory? It allocates memory in the heap, and then it returns a pointer which is a void type. So you typecast it to integer type and store it inside the pointer that you just declared. Now finally, after this, you can actually use this pointer like the array name and access the elements using the indexes. Now, if say suppose the space for allocating some amount of memory is insufficient, in that case, the allocation fails and you return a null pointer. the malloc function is going to return a null pointer. The next function for under the stdlib.h library we looked at was free, which is actually used to free the space. And it is because whenever you use malloc or even calloc function for dynamically allocating memory, it does not deallocate itself after you have used it. So you have to specifically do it, which you can do using the free function. Okay. Now comes the part where we are considering the pointer. So we say that if, say, suppose you write the statement a of I, this statement here, which is accessing a particular element at the ith index, then this statement is equivalent to star of arr plus I. And how is that? We have looked into what was the logic behind these. So we say that let us suppose you have this array here which has 4 elements, and now you want to find out that you have ARR of 2 as a particular element, and corresponding this, the statement is going to be pointer plus 2. So whenever, so for this we understood the pointer arithmetic, that is whenever you add to a pointer an integer, it is going to make jump to that number of places. And how does it do that? So it says that the integer that you have added to the pointer should be multiplied by the size of the data type of that particular pointer type. So you have integer pointer type. So size of integer here is 4 bytes, and you simply multiply it with the integer and find out the address. So this is going to give you an address. We also looked into how this addressing works. So if you write P simply, it is going to return you the address of A. And if you, so A means the address that P is storing. And if you write star P, it is going to give you the value which is stored at that particular address, right? So we follow the same thing here. Okay, so Prabhakar has mentioned a doubt. He's saying that an array, so he read it in a book that an array is a very useful data structure which is provided in programming languages. Yes. However, it has at least two limitations. Its size has to be known at the compilation time. So they are all talking about the static allocation here, and they are saying that we have to fix the size of n of an array in advance, which makes resizing of an array difficult. Yes, so this is true. That is what we looked into, right? They are not here considering about dynamic memory allocation. They are just giving you what a basic bare array does. So in a basic bare array, you when you consider the static allocation, you have a fixed size. That is what we discussed. So in order to solve this problem, we said that we can use dynamic memory allocation. So whenever we are giving the size at runtime, you saying if you doing it statically, that means it is going to consider that the program won't work until you give a value of n. So if you're doing it using static memory allocation, then until you give the value of n in the program won't work, right? And in the above two whatever limitations they've mentioned, they are not considering dynamic memory allocation. Okay. Okay, let us move ahead. So I hope there are no doubts in understanding this particular part. That is, the name of the array is same as the pointer. So a pointer is the name of the array is actually pointing to the starting location of the array. Okay. So if you print simply the name of the array, it is going to give you the starting location of the array. Okay. So let us move ahead. Let us quickly look at the address calculation part. So address calculation of an array is very easy since you have a one-dimensional array currently. So here we say that address of ith element of the array will be equivalent to the base address of the array plus I into the size of the data type. So if you consider an integer array, you say that let us start with the base or the starting address of the array, and I am going to add to it I into the size, which is 4 bytes, since integer takes up 4 bytes of data or memory. So you multiply it by 4. And we also looked at certain number of examples here, right? We looked into how are you going to find out the address of the ith element for a double array and for a character array as well. Okay, so this was the final review of what we looked at yesterday, all the theoretical part, and then we looked into two programming questions. Those were very easy. The first was to delete an element from the array given a value, and we saw that it can simply be done by shifting one element towards the left. And similarly, we looked into another coding problem, which was to reverse an array. The logic was very simple, that you should go up till n by 2 minus 1th element and swap the corresponding elements. Okay, so let us now begin with today's lecture, which was actually supposed to have questions. So today's lecture is going to be completely based on programming questions. We are going to discuss different kinds of programming questions, and we are also going to look at how they can be solved and what are the different kinds of solutions that these programming questions are going to have. Okay, so let me just go through the group. Okay, so Harshit Rathore is asking, what does this mean? It simply means that you have declared an integer n and you're inputting the value of n, and then after that simply declaring an array with the size n which you have taken as an input from the user. Okay. Okay, let us begin then. So we are going to be, as I said, talking about programming questions only today. So there are, so let me tell you firstly about how it goes ahead. How are programming questions, in what way they are asked? Okay, so there will be let us say 2 to 3 sections, or 2 to 3 times you can say, wherein for whenever you sit for any particular um, selection process of any company, you can be asked questions. So let us just first look at where can you get asked about programming questions. So the first process that occurs is an online exam or a coding exam. So it is mostly on online editors nowadays. So none of the companies, even though even though before the COVID times, they used to take online tests, which was on coding platforms, let us say like CodeChef or HackerEarth, HackerRank, and other of these. Okay. So the first thing is online tests, and they can be on, let us say, any platform. HackerEarth, let us say, HackerRank, Okay.
This call is now being recorded.
So this is the first thing where you can get asked about in coding questions. So you will specifically have to code the correct answers and then move ahead. Now, in which particular part will you get asked about coding questions? So after you clear this online test for any particular company, there are, let us say, there is another round of, let us say, designing an algorithm or writing down the code, and that can be a pen and paper round as well, and it can be an online round as well. So basically you have in two modes, either online or offline. So on in offline mode, you're going to get asked about programming questions in interviews. Okay. Now both of these have actually different processes. So let us also look at those. So whenever you have an online test, okay, whenever you have an online test, you are going to get certain questions and you have to pass a set of test cases in order to clear that particular question and score uh, any number of marks. Okay, so this will require you, the online mode will actually require you to code, and it will require you to know the proper syntax. While when you consider the offline mode, whenever you're asked about coding questions in interviews, they do not really look into your syntax, but they look into your approach along with the uh, time complexity or how efficient your code is. Okay, so these are the actual two ways in which your programming skills will be tested. So we are going to whenever we are going to do programming questions, we are going to look at those questions from both of these perspectives. Okay, so let us begin. Let us first pick up one of the programming questions and see how you can do it. Okay, so the first question that we are going to consider, programming problem that we are going to consider today, will be k-left rotation of the array. Okay. Okay, so by k-left rotation of the array, what I mean is, let me give you an example and then you can go ahead. So say for example, you have been given an array. Let us say this is the array that you have been given. It has 6 elements. Okay, and along with the number, so let me write this down as well. So number of elements, let us consider this as a variable n with a value 6. And you have also been given a value. Let us say this value is k, and this, for this particular example, the value of k is 2. Okay, and now you have to rotate the array towards the left by k elements. So you say rotate the array towards the left by k. Okay, so let us look at how it is going to be done. Okay, so Harshit, Akshita, Naman, you guys can leave the group and have your own discussion wherever you want, because I don't think this part is much more important than what you're discussing, right? Let us first discuss what these guys are discussing. We shouldn't have classes like these. Okay, Akshita? Okay, let us move ahead. To all those who want to discuss something else, you can exit the group and do that yourself. So we are considering k-left rotation of an array, and we are saying, let us say for example, you have this array where number of elements is equivalent to 6, and then you have k which is equivalent to 2, and you have to rotate the array towards the left by k. So let us understand what will be the output. So for any programming question, as you might already know, we discussed this earlier as well. Whenever you want to understand the approach to a particular question, you should always have the input first and then write down what do you want to have in the output. Okay, so let us write down what do we want to have in our output. So we say that we want to rotate the array towards the left by k times. Okay, so let us first rotate. K here is 2. Let us first rotate for k is equal to 1. So let me write down the same array again once and then rotate it towards the left by, let us say, one position for now. So we say that 2 comes to the first position now, 3 comes to the second position. So each of the elements, if you can see, are moving towards their left by one position. So this was for actually for k is equal to 1. That is, by k elements, that is by one element, you have shifted the elements of the array towards the left by one position, right? Now we want to do it for k is equal to 2. So let us do this one more time. Again, we move these elements towards the left by one position. So we have this. Okay, so we finally got our output, which is for k is equal to 2. We have moved all of the elements towards their left by k positions, which is k for this case is equal to 2. Okay, so this was the input that you got, and this is the output that you want to achieve, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Shall we move ahead? Is the question clear to everyone? Okay. Okay, so let us move ahead. Let us now look at how can you resolve it. Okay, so what will happen whenever you get questions like these? So let us discuss how will you perform this in an online test and how are you going to do it in an offline mode. Okay, so for an online test, you will simply be given this input array and they are going to give you the value of k and you have to simply code and find out the result. So you have to generalize the solution whenever you do it for uh, an online test because they are going to have multiple test cases. By multiple test cases, I mean is that they every time they're not going to have the same array. They can consider different arrays and different values of k and see if you are able to code the solution correctly. Okay. So this is what is the expectation in an online test. Now, what happens in the offline mode or an interview? So if say suppose the interviewer is going to ask you a question of k left rotation of an array by explaining you this. So the interviewer has explained you what he wants you to do and then he asks you to tell the solution. Now, what happens in an interview? You should go ahead and talk about the most naive solution that you know. So we are going to move ahead in a similar way. We are going to consider different solutions, but we are going to begin with the solution which is most naive. By most naive, I mean is that one of those solutions which you can actually figure out by looking at. So you simply look at what you can do and simply say that this is the way I am going to approach towards this question. Okay, so let us begin with this. So the first method by which you can solve this particular question is by just considering all of the elements. So you know that you want to rotate this particular array towards the left by k times or by k elements. So you say that I am going to pick a particular element and I am going to move it towards the left by considering some extra space. So you say one of the solutions that I can tell you here will be, so let me explain you my solution and then you guys can go ahead. If you have any other solution, then you can also tell about those solutions and then we are going to write them in order. Okay, so I am saying that this method that I am going to consider is going to be using some extra space. So say I have been given this particular array 5 and 6. So you say that if I have k is equal to 2, I am going to have an array of size k. So my step 1 here is going to be take a temporary array of size k. Okay, so I take this array of size k and I say that I am going to fill the first k elements inside my temporary array. Okay, so this is temporary. Inside this temporary array, I say that the first k elements, here I mean first two elements, should be put inside my temporary array. So I have put these elements inside my temporary array. The next step that I want to do here is shift these elements by k positions towards the left. So what do I mean by k position? Is that if you have this array and you want to shift it by k positions towards the left, I mean that I am going to pick up an element. Okay, so I am going to here begin with the same index as we have of k. So I say that I am going to begin with this particular position, which is k is equal to 2. So let me also write down the indexes for you. So I begin with k is equal to 2 index, this index, and I say that I am going to move towards the left. So this particular position is going to have this element which is 2 positions ahead of it, 1, 2. So 3 comes at this particular place. Now which is the element which is going to come at this position? 1. So I do 1 plus 2. So index, basically we are doing index plus 2. Let us say the index is this I, and we are saying that a of I, we run a loop and we say that a of I should now be equivalent to a of I plus 2. Okay, so for I is equal to 0, you do 0 plus 2, which is 2, so you bring 3 here. For I is equal to 1, you do 1 plus 2, which is 3, so you bring 4 here. For I is equal to 2, you do 2 plus 2, and you bring the element which is at 4th index, index number 4 here. And similarly do the same for the rest of the elements. So after you have done this, this is the array that you have. And you are going to do it only up till n minus k. Okay, so you do it only up till n minus k, and this is the resulting array that you have. Now after this, what do? You say that the temporary array that I had should now be placed at towards the end of the original array. So you replace the last 2 elements. You have only 2 elements in the temporary array, and now you're going to replace them with the last 2 elements in the original array. So you have 3, 4, 5, 6, and you replace these 2 elements by 1 and 2. And now if you see, you get the final result, which is something that you wanted to achieve. All the elements have moved towards their left by k position. So you have performed the k rotation of the array. Okay. So did everyone understand the first method here? Okay, so do you want me to explain it again? Okay, yes. So I think you have mentioned it in the group. So what do you do here? Let me go through it again. You have the initial input array. You first of all take a temporary array which is of size k. You have already been given the value of k. So here in this case, the value of k is 2. So you say that I am going to have a temporary array of size 2. So you have this size 2 array. Now the next thing that you do is you pick up the first 2 elements from the array and paste them here. In the temporary array is going to have the same elements as the elements of the first 2 as the same first 2 elements in the original array. So if suppose the temporary array had to be of size 3, then the next element in the temporary array would be 3. So this is your temporary array. Now after you've got the temporary array, what you do here is you say that I am going to start a loop from the index which is equivalent to k. So here k is equivalent to 2. So you start a loop from this index and you go on and shift the elements towards their left by k positions. Okay. So here you see 3 has come here. 4 has come here. So this is the actual statement that you're going to write. Inside the loop, this is the actual statement that you write. You say that a of I should now be equal to a of I plus 2. Okay, so if you want, let me just quickly write down the simple pseudocode part of this particular solution. So the first thing that you do is you, let us say, take an integer because you want to now have a new array. and you say that you do P is equal to in star, because you now want to create a new array which is of size. This is an integer array and you want to create a new array of size k. So you mention k here. Okay. You've created a new array of size k. Now you want to initialize the first two elements in the temporary array. Okay. So for that you run a for loop. I is equal to 0 to I less than k, and you say that p of I should be equivalent to a of I. If the original array is a, you say p of I should be equal to a of I. Now these two elements are copied inside the temporary array. After that, what do? You say that again I am going to start a loop from I is equal to 0 and go on up till I less than n minus k. Okay, you move till, you start from this particular position and go on up till n minus k. So n here is, what is the value of n? N is 6. And what is the value of k? It is 2. So you say that I am going to go on up till less than n minus k. Less than n minus k. N minus k is 4. So less than 4. You're going to go up till here. Now, when you start from here, you say that a of I, the same statement that I've written here, a of I should be now equivalent to a of I plus 2. So you're bringing all of the elements towards the left by 2 positions. Okay? Is that clear? And why do you require a temporary array? It can either be n minus k minus 1 if you're writing equal here, or if you're writing less than, then it is going to be n minus k. Why do you require a temporary array? You require a temporary array because after you shift the elements, the last of those many number of elements are going to have these positions, right? Since it is a circular type of rotation, you say that 1 comes here and 2 comes here. So you simply paste the temporary array towards the end. Yes, correct. To hold the values of the first two elements, you use the temporary array, and we are following the same approach to do this. So is this first method of using extra space and then rotating the array towards the left by k positions, is this approach clear to everyone? Yes. So shall we move ahead, everyone? Okay, so looks like you've understood. With that, let us also discuss what will be the time complexity and the space complexity of this solution that we have just discussed. So now you see here, when we are considering a temporary array, we are considering an extra array other than the input array that we have. So what will be the space complexity in this case? The space complexity in this case will be big O of k, right? Will be big O of k. How will it be big O of k? Now, so how do you calculate the space complexity? The space complexity is simply calculated by looking at what amount of extra space you're using in order to um, solve the problem. So in order to solve this problem, the extra space that you're using is only this temporary array. And what is the size of this temporary array? The size of this temporary array is k. It is always going to have k elements, right? So big O of k. Okay, and what will be the time complexity? Since you are going to run a loop starting from 0 to n, either n minus k, or it is going to go ahead even. So you remove the constant and you say that the time complexity will be order of n. N is the total number of elements that you have in your array. So the final time complexity will be order of n. Okay, so let us move ahead with another solution that we can think of. So by this you can understand that we can, for solving any particular problem, we can have multiple solutions, and those solutions can either be efficient in terms of time complexity or in terms of space complexity, or even both, right? So whenever you are answering any programming question during the interview, you should first start with one of those solutions which takes more time and more space, let us say, which is not really efficient. Okay, so you first give one of those examples. If the interviewer is satisfied with those examples, then okay. If he is not and he asks you to, let us say, make your solution more efficient, then you go ahead and tell him about the next solution. Okay. So in this way, you are going to answer any particular programming question during the interview. Okay, let us begin and look at the next solution that you can have for this particular problem. So one of the other methods that you could follow is to left rotate by one position each time. So we saw here that we were left rotating the element by two positions, right? You were doing it for two positions. Let us do this thing one by one. Like we saw this solution here. We said that we want to left rotate this array by k positions towards the left, and the value of k was 2. So what we did, we broke that down into two steps. We did it once for k is equal to 1, and then we did it again to make k is equal to 2, right? So we are going to follow the same approach that we looked at firstly. And what will be the difference here? The difference here will be that we are not going to use any extra space. So this solution that you looked at was using extra space. And now, since, say, suppose if you are allowed to use some extra space, then you could use this solution. And if, say, you were not allowed to use any extra space, then let us consider another solution which is without using any extra space. But let us look at what will be the time complexity of the other solution. So we say that this method is going to be left rotate by one position each time. So it is very simple to understand. Let us consider the same example once again, and let us quickly look at what we saw previously. So let us say you have this same array, and now you have been given the value k is equal to 2, and you say that I want to rotate this particular array towards the left by k positions, okay, and so this means you have to do it k times. So when you have to do it k times, you say I'm going to do it one by one. So you say first I'm going to keep my first variable, this first element of the array, in a temporary variable. Let us say I keep 1 inside a temporary variable t, and then shift all the elements towards their left by one position. So you have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And later on, at the last position, you simply store t. So at a of n is going to be your last index, which, sorry, n minus 1 is going to be your last index. So at a of n minus 1, you want to store the value of t, which is the temporary variable. So you do 1. Now, once you have done this, you have done this only one time, okay, but it is asking you to do it twice. So you say, okay, I'm going to do it inside another loop. So I'm going to first do this using one loop and then keep an outer loop in which I am going to repeat it k times. Okay, so again you say that I'm going to store the first element of the array inside a temporary variable and move all of the elements towards their left by one position. So you do this and you get this. Finally, you store the at the last position at n minus 1 index, you store the value of t. So you finally get the rotation of k is equal to 2. So this means that the first loop that you are using is to rotate the elements towards their left by one position, and the outer loop, so it is going to be in the nested form. So the second loop or the outer loop you use is to run and perform this operation k number of times. Okay, so this is another simple solution. So if we talk about the time complexity of this particular solution, it is going to be order of n square. Why? Because you are going to have two loops and both of these loops can run n times. Now it is possible that your value of n, value of k here becomes n. So if you say that I want to do it n number of times, let us say I have n elements and I want to rotate it n number of times, then you will not require any rotation. It is going to be the same array, right? But in this case, it is not going to identify that it is going to be the same array. So you say that it is either going to be n into k or it is going to be n square. So the time complexity can also go up to n square if the value of k is n. Okay, so the same question you've posted in the group. If the value of k becomes n, there is no way in this particular solution that you can identify that the value of k is equivalent to n. So it becomes order of n into k for time when you do not put the condition if n is equal to k, or if you put this condition of n is equal to k, then it is going to be this. Is this clear? Is the time complexity part clear to everyone? When it is going to be order of n square and when it is going to be order of n into k? No. So this thinking is absolutely wrong, that you say that it is going to be n to the power of k. Why should it be n to the power of k? When you do 2 into 3, when you do something 3 times, does it become that to the power of 3 times? No. Okay, so let me repeat this again, and then we will again look into what will be the time complexity here. So we say, so in this second method, what do we say? We say that we are going to have this particular array as an input, and we say that since we have to rotate this array by k positions towards the left, which is k times, so we say that let us do it one by one. So when you do it one by one, you say that I am going to first pick up the first element. So you pick up the first element of the array, store it in a temporary variable, and shift all the elements towards the left by one position. So you see 2 has come to this position 1, 3 has come to this position of 2, all the elements have come to their left by one position. Now you repeat the same procedure k number of times. To get the final output, you will have to repeat the same procedure k number of times. So you again, since this time the value of k was 2, so you do t, you again do the same thing. This time the first element of your array was 2, so you put it in a temporary variable and shift all the elements towards their left again by one position, and finally store t at the end of the array after you've done it. Okay, so this is the actual solution or the actual approach that you are going to follow. Now what happens in this case? So say let us consider, to understand the time complexity part, let us take a small example. So if you say that I have this array, you have this small array, and the value of k that has been given to you is 3. Okay, the value of this thing, the value of k that has been given to you is 3. Let us look at it at a small array, then you are going to understand. For all of those who are still not understanding, let us focus here and look at this particular solution. So you have this value for this method. The method that we used, the approach that we used in the second way is that you pick up the first element, you store it inside. So let me write this down here. You pick up this element, you store it here. You took a temporary variable, stored the first element here, and you said that I am going to shift all the elements by one position towards the left, and after that I am going to store the temporary variable at the last position. So you have this here. Now you have done this thing one time, but you have to do it 3 times. Why? Because the value of k is 3. Okay, so you do this again. So you say this time the first element is 2, so I store 2 in a temporary variable, shift all the elements towards their left by one position, and then store the temporary variable back to the last position. Okay, you have done it twice now. So this rotation has been done twice now. Let us do it another time. Why? Because why are we doing it 3 times? Because the value of k that has been given to us is 3. So you do 1. Now again you store the first element in the temporary variable and shift all the elements towards their left. So you do 1, 2, and 3. 3 comes here towards the end after you've shifted all the elements. 3 comes at the last position, which is you store the temporary variable at the last position. Now you have done it thrice. Now can you see here? The original array that you had as an input is equivalent to the array which you have now. So the array that you have now is same as which you had originally. So that means if you rotate the array, it is a very simple logic that if you rotate the array n times, if you have n elements in the array, which is in this case 3, and you rotate the array n number of times, which is 3 times here again. So if the value of n and k is same, in that case you get the same array. You get the same array. So in that case, what will happen? both the loops, the inner loop and the outer loop, is going to run n times. So you can have the time complexity of order of n square. Okay, so is this clear to you now? Is this clear to everyone? How and when this complexity will become order of n square? In order to make this particular approach, the second approach that we looked at, a bit more efficient, you could simply say that if n is equal to k, you can keep a check if n is equal to k, then do nothing and simply print the array again. Okay, good. So if you have understood, let us move ahead and look at another approach. So the time complexity we've seen here can be, in the worst case, be order of n square, and the space complexity, what will be the space complexity? So since you did not consider any extra space, so the space complexity will be order of 1. Okay. Okay, let us now look at another approach. Now, so whatever approaches we are discussing, I would like all of you to go ahead after the class and try to code these approaches. So you should go ahead and try to write down the code for these approaches. And if you have any problems after that is, if you're unable to code, then you can approach me, or we can have another session for this particular part wherein we are going to discuss how can you write down the code for any particular problem. Okay, so let us discuss another method quickly. So this third method is known as the juggling approach. So now this juggling approach is a bit complex. So please focus here. This is for everyone. You should focus here. This is a bit complex in understanding. You will not understand it until and unless you pick up more number of examples and do it. So we are going to try to look at, let us say, 2 to 3 examples here. But if you still don't understand this approach, even after 2 to 3 examples, then you should go ahead and in your homework, you should try at different values. Okay. So since we do not have much time in this particular class in order to discuss all of the approaches and understand this with multiple examples, we are going to look at only a limited number of examples, and then as a part of your homework, you should go ahead and look into more examples. Okay. So yes, let us begin. Please focus here. So in this method, this is basically a method which is similar to the second method, but in this method, we have to create sets. So let us see how these sets are going to be created. So we say that you should divide the array. The step 1 for this particular approach is to divide the array into sets of size. So let us see. So let us not first look at the size, but let us look at sets. And how are you going to, so let us see how are you going to divide the array into sets. So for that, we say that you will have to take the GCD or HCF. You know what GCD and HCF is. It is greatest common divisor of any two numbers of n and k. So you have n as the total number of elements in your array and k as the number that has been given to you, by which you have to rotate the array. Okay, so you do GCD of n and k, and then finally find out the number of sets in which your array is going to be divided. So for this particular example, let us consider a bigger array so that you can simply understand how the sets are formed and what all elements are there in the set. So let us simply consider a big array which is of 12 elements. Let us say, for example, we will later on look into another example which will have, let us say, 5 elements or 6 elements also, like we looked here for 6 elements. So yes, so say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we have this array here, and we say that here n is equal to 12, number of elements is 12, and let us say the value of k that has been given to us is 3. Okay, so let us see how many sets can you divide this array into. So for that, you will have to find out the GCD of n and k. In this case, GCD of 12 and 3. So what is the GCD of 12 and 3? The GCD of 12 and 3 is 3, and this 3 means the number of sets that you can divide your array into. So you have 3 sets. You can divide this array into 3 sets. Now let us see how many elements will you have in each set. So number of elements in each set will be equivalent to n divided by 3. N is 12 divided by 3 gives you 4. So in each, you are going to have to divide this array into 3 sets, and each of these sets is going to have 4 elements. So up till now, is this clear to everyone? Is it clear how to divide the array into sets and how many elements will there be in a particular set? Okay. Okay, so let us move ahead with this. Now, let us look at what are the 4 elements that are going to be a part of each set. So since there are going to be 3 sets and 4 elements in each set, let us see what are those 4 elements. So we say that this element 1 is going to be replaced by this element 4. This element 4 is going to be replaced by this element 7. This element 7 is going to be replaced by this element 10. Okay? So is this clear to everyone? So you see there are 4 elements. So this is the first set. In red color, we have first set of elements. We have first set, we have 4 elements in the first set. Now so what you will have to do here is, you will have to swap these elements among them in the cyclic form. So the array that you get after changing the elements in this particular set will be, so 4 comes at the position of 1. So you have 4, 2, 3. At the position of this element 4, you get 7. So you have 7 here, you have 5, 6. At the position of 7, you get 10. So you have 10, 8, 9. At the position of 10, you get 1. So you have 1, 11, and 12. Okay. So how are these elements moving? These elements are moving like this. So you have 4 at the position of 1, 7 at the position of 4, 10 at the position of 7, and 1 at the position of 10. So after the first iteration, what should happen? These elements should change their positions. Okay. Now, what will be the second set of elements? We have looked at the first set out of these three sets. Let us look at the other two sets also. So the other two sets will be 2, 5, 8 and 11. And the elements which are in no color, that is 3, 6, 9 and 12 are going to be a part of the third set. So we see we have three sets. In each set we have 4 elements, and among these sets we are going to move the elements. So now after you have moved the elements in the first set, you move the elements in the second set also. So after you move the elements in the second set, at the position of 2, you are going to get 5. Get 5 here, then you have 3, you have 7. At the position of 5, you are going to get 8. Then you have 6, 10, and then you have at the position of 8, you are going to have 11. So you have 11 here. Then 9, 1, and then at the position of 11, you are going to have 2. So 2 moves here. And then you have 12 again. So this is after the second set has changed, the second set of elements have changed their position. And finally, when the third set of elements are going to change their position, the array that you are going to get will be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So this is the final array that you're going to get after rotating the number of elements of k, which is equal to 3. So all the positions, all the elements have moved to positions 3 towards their left, by 3 towards their left. Okay, so is this clear to everyone? Is this approach clear to everyone? Okay. Yes, so it's great to look at people who are understanding. Let us look at another example also, and then we are going to move ahead with another question. We are running a bit late today, but anyway, let us just continue. Okay, so this was an example for, let us say, number of elements which are equivalent to 12, and you have the value of k, which is equivalent to 3 this time, right? So also let us look at another example. So say consider, so if say for example the GCD comes out to be 1, which in a lot of cases it will, then in that case what you will do? In that case, it is going to move ahead in the same set. You are going to make changes. You're going to have only one set because the GCD is 1, and then all of the elements will be in the same set. So it is going to work in a similar way like we did for this particular approach. In this particular approach, you had only one set and all the elements were moving in one set only, right? So let us look at another example. This time let us consider a small array. So let us say, sorry. Let us say this time you only have 6 elements. Let us consider half of the elements this time. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let us say 6. Okay. And again, let us say we are saying that n is equal to 6 this time and k is equal to 3. Let us consider k is equal to 3 again. And if we consider the GCD of n and k, this time we again get 3 sets. But now see, we are having the number of sets equivalent to 3 only, but this time each set is going to have less number of elements. So you say that each set will have 6 divided by 3, which is equivalent to 2 elements. And you have 3 sets. So let us look at what will those elements be. So you say that you have first element, which is this. The next element is 4. Now we are having only 2 elements in each set. Let us look at what will be you have in another set. In another set, you are going to have 2 and 5. So this time you see only these 2 elements are going to swap their positions. So after the first iteration, if you say you are going to have 1, so at the position of 1, you are going to have 4, then you have 2, 3. At the position of 4, you would want to change the position of 1. So 1 comes at the position of 4. So you have 1 here. Then you have 5 and 6. In the next one, you're again going to have 2 elements which are going to change their positions. So you say 4 remains here. At the position of 2, you're going to have 5. Then you have 3, 1. At the position of 5, you're going to have 2 and then 6. And after the third set changes its values, you are going to have 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, and 3. Right? So similarly, now what I want you to do in this case is take up more examples, and let us say some examples with where GCD equivalents to 1. First, write down a small code. So another thing that you will have to keep in mind here will be this particular problem that we looked at previously, which is what will happen if n is equivalent to k. If n and k are equivalent, what you could do is you could simply put a condition, which is every time you should do this. K equivalent to k mod n. This will also work if the value of k is greater than n. So let us consider the same small example so that you can understand easily. You say if you have 1, 2, 3, and let us say this time you have been given the value of k is equal to 4. So once you rotate this particular array by 4 times, let us do that one by one. So you have done this for k is equal to 1. For k is equal to 2, you are going to get this. For k is equal to 3, you are going to get this. For k is equal to 4, you are going to get this. So you see it is equivalent to the result that you get for k is equal to 1. And this is equivalent to the result that you get for k is equal to 4. So if you put this condition, this is going to resolve the extra loop iterations that will occur. Okay? This condition is going to save that for you. Yes, so if you have some certain values, which is, let us say, a solution for what will happen if n is equal to 7 and k is equal to 4, for any case where you have GCD equivalent to 1, you should write down the solution of the code that you're considering. So like you are going to write down the solution for any other method or approaches here, simply do the same thing for this and see what will happen if the GCD is going to be 1. When the GCD is going to be 1, it is going to actually run in the same way like it did for the second method. In the second method, what did you do? You pick up the first element, place it at its correct position, and then do the same thing with the other elements. What were you doing in this particular solution? You picked up this element 3, you place it at its correct position, then you pick up the next element 4, place it at its correct position. The same thing is going to happen when you have GCD equivalent to 1. Okay, so that for that particular part, I'm going to leave it up to you about how you're going to go ahead and move with this approach. Okay, any doubts in understanding this particular approach apart from the part where the GCD is going to be 1? You should go ahead and look at this particular part. If you don't understand this particular part where GCD comes out to be 1, then we are going to consider examples and look at that. But we will keep that for a separate session. But just first go ahead and do it yourself, try it for yourself, and then see. Shall we move ahead, everyone? Okay, so for those of you who are not getting the correct result and you're posting in the group, you haven't tried. You cannot just take up one example and see if it is working or not. Until and unless you'll put in your mind into it and do it for yourself, do some brainstorming, it won't help. I cannot explain you each and everything and then you go ahead and do nothing. Okay, so first try. Once you have tried and you're not able to do it, then you should go ahead and come to me and ask about any questions that you have. Okay. Okay, so this particular approach should actually work in order of n time, but since you haven't written the code yourself, we haven't yet looked into what kind of code you're going to write. So for everyone, you can write different codes, right? Your approach in order to solve this particular problem will be different because you're going to also consider this case where GCD is going to be 1. Okay, so after you consider this case and then see what is going to be the final time complexity. But here, since we are not considering any extra space, so there will be order of 1 space complexity. The time complexity in the ideal case is going to be order of n. But once you resolve this question, write down the code, then you can tell me what is the time complexity or how much efficient can you make your program. But if you are not able to reach the order n time, then then we are going to be discussing it. Okay. Okay, shall we move ahead, everyone? Okay. Okay, so let us quickly look at another question. So in this question, let me just write this down. So you let us say that you have an array. So you have been given an array again, since we are considering all of those kind of questions. So we say that given an integer array, except one element. Okay, so this is the second problem that you have, which is, let us say you have been given an integer array and it has all elements which are occurring even number of times. So we are not talking of even elements. The elements are not even specifically. We are saying that you have been given an integer array where all of the elements are occurring. So we are talking about the occurrences. The number of occurrences of all elements is even, except for one element which is occurring odd number of times. Okay, now you have to find out that particular element which is occurring odd number of times. So let us go ahead with whatever you can think of. So like we moved ahead in this way, wherein we looked at solutions. So the first solution that we looked at in the previous problem was not much efficient. It was one of the naive solutions which was considering extra space, not much efficient. Similarly, go ahead and tell me what will be the naive approach of this particular question. How are you going to approach this particular question? And you can post your answers in the group. We can use XOR to find that element, correct? But is that a naive solution? Siddharth is also saying the same thing. We can use XOR operator, correct? Yes, it is one of those solutions wherein we can use the XOR operator, but it is not a naive solution, right? So what is going to be the naive solution? Counting the occurrences. Yes, correct. So we are going to count the frequency of each element. So guys, it is good that you know the solution to a particular problem. But as I said, you do not have to show it while you are giving answers in an interview, right? So whenever you're giving an answers in an interview, you do not need to show that you are aware of so much efficient solutions, because after that, whatever questions that you're going to be getting are going to be much harder, right? So we move ahead in this way, that we are going to answer the naive solution first. So we say an before asking as well, I mentioned it that what is the naive solution that you can think of. So we say that the first method or the first naive solution that you can think of is by simply saying that I am going to use two loops and count the frequency of each element and then see if my count modulus 2 is not equal to 0, then I'm going to output that particular element. Right? This is one of the simple approaches that you can use, which is to pick up an element from the array. So let us also look at an example. So say for example, you have this array here, which has the following elements. So you have 2, 7, 5, let us say 7 again, 2, 5, and 2. So you see here 2 is occurring 3 times, 7 is occurring 2 times, and 5 is occurring 2 times again. Correct? So you see 2 here is one of those elements which is occurring odd number of times, that is 3 times, while 7 and 5 are occurring 2 times, which means that they are occurring even number of times, right? So in this case, what happens here is you are going to count the frequency of each element. So you pick up the first element here, you count its frequency, which is found out to be 3. And after that, you do count modulus 2. If it is not equal to 0, it means it is not an even number. And the count is odd. So when the count is odd, you simply output that element and break out of the loop. Here, the first element that you pick up is occurring odd number of times, but in any other example, it might not be the case. Okay, so this is one of the naive solution. The other solution that you have can be XOR, as a lot of you said, which is XOR. So what is the property of XOR that you have? The property of XOR that you're going to use in this particular case is going to be that this element, if let us say A is one of those elements, so if you XOR A, we are going to talk about bitwise XOR. So if you do bitwise XOR of two elements which are same, it is going to return you 0. And if we do bitwise XOR of an element with 0, then it is going to return you that particular element only. Right? So these are the properties that we use for bitwise XOR, and we simply say that these are the elements after you XOR all of the elements of the array. Sorry. So we say that after you XOR all of the elements of the array, you are going to finally get the result. So what do? You do result of XOR is equal to result of XOR, and you do bitwise XOR of A of I. You run a loop from starting from I is equal to 0 to n minus 1, and you XOR all of the elements of the array, and the final result that you get is going to contain that particular element which is occurring odd number of times. It will store the element which is occurring odd number of times. Correct? So both of these are clear to everyone. It is one of the simple questions, but it has been asked a lot of times. This question has been asked a lot of times in online exams of a lot of MNCs, because a lot of people actually solve it using the n square time complexity. This method here is going to take n square time complexity. So this they put in a time limit here, and a lot of answers and sample test cases are going to result into time limit exceeded error. So if you solve it using this order n, since this is going to take order n time, so this becomes a very easy solution. Okay. Okay, so you want to understand the XOR method again. Let us look at that. Aditya Penuli, I would like to take up some classes from you, spoken English classes. When can we begin? Let us connect personally, Aditya. I would like to get some spoken English classes from you. Because I was saying naive as knave, and a lot of you couldn't understand. Okay, let us look at the second method again. So we are saying that we have XOR. We can so the property of XOR is that we have, if we XOR two elements which are same, we are going to get the result as 0. And if we XOR 0 and an element, then you get the same element again. So say, for example, if you apply this XOR on this particular array, all of the elements which are same are going to result into 0. The only element that is going to remain is the element which is going to occur odd number of times. Okay. So what you could do here is simply run a for loop. Inside the for loop, start from, let us say, 0 and go on up till n minus 1 and XOR all the elements in the array. So after you XOR, the only element or the result that you're going to be getting is the element which is occurring odd number of times, because only that will remain. Only that element is going to remain inside this result of XOR, and you can simply output this particular result. So in this case, the time complexity will be order of n. Why? Because you pick up an element, XOR with the next element. Pick up that element, XOR with the next element. Again, pick up an element, XOR with the next element, so on until all the elements of the array are covered. Is it clear to everyone? Oh no, I did not take your offense, Aditya. Okay, so any doubts to anyone else regarding any of these questions that we have discussed today? So again, like yesterday, I'm going to be posting a link on the group, and you are going to have separate links for the test. There is going to be a test. Again, we are going to have 2 questions and 1 hour. And you can attempt that test. So yesterday, the last time for taking up the test was 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., the link expired. So I have extended that for today. So after you get the link today, the link is going to expire tomorrow, that is 17th December at 10 a.m. Okay, so before 10 a.m., you should be taking up the test. And for all of those who are facing issues on HackerEarth, you should try to resolve those issues on your own. So you are XORing all of the elements here. So you XOR, let us say you XOR 2 and 7, then with the result you XOR 5. The same thing you're doing here, right? This is going to be inside a loop. So if you have a prime number, then it is going to be odd, GCD of 1, right? GCD will be 1 there. So anyway, it is going to be GCD 1, which is the solution that you have to look for. So which all languages do you want me to consider and include in the test? Can you please mention those languages, Prabhat? Are these tests for self-practice or their submission will be added? We haven't considered that yet, but it might be possible that we consider that as an evaluation for the bootcamp. We can also solve the method by order and time complexity by sorting it. Yes, we can do that. That is also a solution. Yes, so it has already been mentioned in the question. The specification was given in the question that the element occurs odd number of times. There is only one element which occurs odd number of times. Okay, so you want me to code this particular solution. There is nothing to code in the solution. The simple thing that you need to do is run a for loop for I is equal to 0 to I less than n, I plus plus, and inside the loop you're going to have this. And finally, when you get this as an output, you return this result of XOR. That's all. Nothing more in the code. Yes, so you want Java as well as Python. I'm going to consider that, and I'm going to, let us say, put in, so I don't know about Python, but I might, C++ is already included in the test. C is also already included. C and C++ are the two languages that you can code in. When you talk about Java, I'll see if I can consider that. It won't happen for today's test because that has already been created, but we'll look into others as well. Okay, any other doubts, anyone? If no, then let us end the class for today. And before ending, I would just like to say that you should take up the test, and also you should be coding all of the problems that we are going to be discussing in the bootcamp. We are not going to be discussing the complete codes until and unless it is a very specific one. But yes, for all of these, try to write down the code for each and every approach so that it helps you build up your programming skills. The logic for test question 1, you try to Google it. Okay. So let us move ahead in this way that in tomorrow's lecture, let us keep a bit of a time and let us tomorrow discuss test 1 and the questions as well as the logic. Okay. So tomorrow we are going to be discussing test 1 before starting with the new topics. Okay.